In the modern age, where digital networks stretch their invisible threads across every aspect of daily life, the nature of persuasion has been transformed from a blunt tool of mass media into a precision-guided mechanism of algorithmic influence. Whereas in past centuries the shaping of public opinion was largely the domain of governments, political parties, and powerful newspapers, today, the task has been assumed by artificial intelligence systems whose reach, subtlety, and adaptability far exceed anything that could have been imagined even 2 decades ago. This new form of persuasion operates quietly, without the loud proclamations of propaganda posters or the grand speeches of political leaders, embedding itself instead in the constant trickle of personalized content that defines the modern media environment. The mechanism is deceptively simple, yet extraordinarily powerful. Vast data streams, drawn from the most intimate details of our lives, the posts we like, the words we search, the routes we travel, the products we buy, are fed into machine learning models designed to predict and shape our behavior. Unlike the propaganda of the 20th century, which relied upon repetitive slogans and broad ideological appeals, algorithmic persuasion works through hyper-personalization, ensuring that each individual receives a narrative crafted precisely to their emotional triggers, cognitive biases, and pre-existing beliefs. In this sense, it is not propaganda in the traditional sense at all, but a form of behavioral engineering that operates below the threshold of conscious awareness, gradually nudging people towards political, economic, and social conclusions without the overt appearance of manipulation. Supporters of this transformation argue that algorithmic persuasion is simply the logical evolution of targeted advertising, a refinement of the tools used to ensure that citizens receive the information most relevant to their interests. From this perspective, there is nothing inherently sinister about the process, provided that the algorithms are transparent, the data is ethically sourced, and the mechanisms of recommendation are subject to independent oversight. They contend that in a world of overwhelming information, personalization is not only convenient, but necessary to prevent individuals from being lost in a sea of irrelevant and contradictory content. In their view, it is better to have an intelligent system curate our information diet than to leave it entirely to chance or to the whims of mass media conglomerates. Yet there is a darker and far more troubling interpretation, which sees algorithmic propaganda not as a benign or neutral tool, but as an extraordinarily potent means of control. In this reading, the artificial intelligence systems that claim to serve the user are in fact serving the agendas of the corporations, governments, and interest groups that design, train, and own them. Since the goals of these entities often include maintaining political dominance, influencing consumer behavior, and ensuring ideological conformity, the algorithms are optimized not for truth, fairness, or democratic balance, but for the maximization of engagement and the reinforcement of profitable or politically expedient narratives. In such a system, the truth becomes subordinate to whatever content most effectively triggers emotional responses, polarizes opinion, or drives people into echo chambers from which dissenting perspectives are algorithmically excluded. The potential economic consequences of this process are profound. A population whose perceptions of reality are algorithmically shaped is also a population whose consumer choices, investment decisions, and patterns of labor can be subtly guided to serve specific market interests. In the same way that social media platforms have become adept at predicting what people will click next, algorithmic persuasion can be directed towards determining what they will purchase, whom they will trust, and even which policies they will tolerate or reject. In the hands of powerful corporate interests, this capability creates an economy in which free market principles exist in name but not in practice, replaced by a kind of algorithmically administered capitalism that operates on a feedback loop between desire and supply, all without the individual ever realizing how their preferences were shaped. There are also serious geopolitical implications, for when these systems are weaponized by state actors, they become tools of information warfare capable of undermining elections, destabilizing rival governments, and manipulating public sentiment across borders. Just as cyber warfare has blurred the lines between peace and conflict, algorithmic propaganda blurs the lines between persuasion and coercion, influence and domination. The same predictive modeling that enables a company to sell a pair of shoes with surgical precision can also be used by a foreign government to sow distrust, spread disinformation, and fracture social cohesion in another nation. This makes algorithmic persuasion not merely a domestic concern, but a strategic threat whose effects ripple through international relations, trade negotiations, and even the conduct of war itself. The ethical challenges of confronting this reality are immense. Should there be strict legal limits on the personalization of political messaging? And if so, who would enforce them? Could algorithms be designed to balance ideological perspectives? And if they could, would that risk creating an artificial equilibrium that suppresses legitimate dissent? How can societies ensure that individuals retain the capacity for independent judgment when every digital interaction is subtly shaping their perceptions? These are questions that no single government or regulatory body can answer in isolation. For the platforms and systems in question are global in scale, transcending borders, and often operating beyond the reach of national laws. The path forward, if one exists, likely requires a combination of technological transparency, public education, and international cooperation. Citizens must be made aware of the extent to which their online environments are curated by invisible algorithms and must be equipped with the critical thinking skills to navigate an information ecosystem that is increasingly tailored to their weaknesses. At the same time, there must be greater scrutiny of the commercial and political incentives that drive the design of these systems, with stronger protections against their abuse. This will require a degree of openness from technology companies that they have historically resisted, as well as a willingness from governments to regulate an industry that has become one of the most powerful political forces in the world. And yet, even with such measures, it is likely that algorithmic persuasion will continue to evolve, growing ever more sophisticated in its ability to anticipate and influence human behavior. The danger is not simply that individuals will be manipulated without their knowledge, but that entire societies will be shaped by forces that are invisible, unaccountable, and largely beyond the reach of democratic oversight. This is the new terrain of power in the 21st century, a realm where influence is no longer broadcast, but whispered individually into millions of ears, each whisper perfectly tuned to its recipient, and each one nudging them in a direction they might not have chosen on their own. As we bring this discussion to a close, it is worth remembering that the question of who truly rules the 21st century cannot be answered simply by looking to presidents, prime ministers, or CEOs, but must also consider the algorithmic architectures that shape our perceptions and decisions every day. In my previous explorations of algorithmic hegemony, I have examined the invisible forces of data control and the subtle ways in which digital systems reorder political and economic realities. And in future episodes, we will turn our attention to the emergence of predictive governance, where algorithms not only shape opinion, but directly influence the formation of policy itself. This is not a distant possibility, but a rapidly approaching reality, and it is one that will demand our most careful scrutiny in the years ahead.